All was chaos in the Oblonsky household. Servants whispered in the corridors, children were uneasy, and Dolly Oblonskaya locked herself away in her room with swollen eyes and a trembling heart. The cause of this domestic storm was no mystery. Her husband, Stepan Arkadyevich, had betrayed her trust. His careless affair with the family governess had come to light, leaving Dolly wounded and humiliated. Stepan, known to all as Stiva, was a man of charm, good humor, and an easy nature. He loved good food, good company, and the pleasures of life, but he was not a man of strong will or moral discipline. His heart held no malice, but neither did it hold the steadfast loyalty his marriage demanded. When Dolly discovered his indiscretion, her world collapsed. The usual morning routine was disrupted. The house, normally warm and lively, seemed filled with tension and silence. Stiva, though regretful, was not consumed by guilt. He believed such matters were simply unfortunate incidents that happened in life. Yet he feared losing the comfortable rhythm of his household. His salvation came from his sister, Anna Karenina, who was due to arrive from St. Petersburg. Anna was admired for her intelligence, grace, and kindness. She possessed a natural ability to bring harmony wherever she went. Stiva hoped her influence would soften Dolly's heart. While this turmoil unfolded in Moscow, another story began to take shape. Konstantin Levin, a country landowner and an old friend of Stiva's, arrived in the city with a serious purpose. Unlike the charming but superficial Stiva, Levin was earnest, thoughtful, and somewhat awkward in society. He came to propose to Katerina Shcherbatskaya, Kitty, Dolly's younger sister. Levin had long cherished quiet dreams of life with Kitty in the countryside, surrounded by honest work and family love. But Kitty's heart was unsettled. Another man had captured her imagination, the handsome and charismatic cavalry officer, Alexei Vronsky. He was the center of attention in Moscow's high society, and Kitty believed his flirtations were leading to a proposal. So when Levin came to declare his love, she, filled with youthful dreams and the promise of romantic grandeur, turned him down. Levin left Moscow wounded, believing his hopes forever shattered. The arrival of Anna Karenina changed everything. She stepped off the train wrapped in elegance, her dark eyes alight with intelligence and warmth. From the moment she embraced Dolly, she brought a wave of tenderness into the broken household. Her quiet conversations, her sincerity, and her affectionate understanding soon softened Dolly's heart. The distance between husband and wife began to close. The family found its rhythm again. Meanwhile, Kitty met Anna at a ball and was struck by her charm. Vronsky, too, was captivated. Although he had seemed devoted to Kitty before Anna's arrival, his attention shifted almost immediately. At the grand ball, Kitty's excitement turned to heartbreak. All night, Vronsky's gaze followed Anna. He danced with her again and again, neglecting Kitty entirely. Anna, radiant in black velvet, carried an air that mesmerized everyone in the hall. Vronsky's infatuation was clear, and Kitty realized with bitter clarity that her dreams of marrying him had been illusions. Anna left the ball shaken by the strength of her feelings. Something in Vronsky's attentiveness stirred emotions she had never known before, emotions that both thrilled and frightened her. As her train carried her back to her husband and son in St. Petersburg, she tried to dismiss the encounter. Yet Vronsky, intoxicated by her presence, followed her there, setting in motion events that would forever alter many lives. Winter lingered over Moscow, wrapping the city in a pale, cold light. In the Shcherbatsky household, a shadow had fallen. Kitty, once full of youthful hope, now drifted through her days like a faded flower. Her radiant smile was gone. Her health had begun to decline. The humiliation at the ball, Vronsky's open adoration of Anna, had struck her deeply. She felt not only rejected but foolish for having believed in his attentions. Her parents watched with growing alarm. Doctors were consulted, but their advice was vague, speaking of nerves and rest. What neither medicine nor polite conversation could heal was the invisible wound in Kitty's heart. Her dreams of love had shattered, leaving her spirit fragile. Her mother decided to take her abroad, to a famous spa in Germany, where the waters were said to heal both body and soul. Meanwhile, far away from the salons and dances of Moscow, Konstantin Levin returned to his country estate. The cold air of the fields welcomed him like an old friend. Though his heart ached with the sting of Kitty's refusal, the land absorbed his sorrow. He threw himself into work with renewed vigor, inspecting the fields, talking with peasants, and contemplating the meaning of a good, honest life. Levin was a man who found clarity not in conversation, but in labor. As he worked alongside the peasants, he sought answers to questions that haunted him. What is happiness? What is love? Why does society complicate what is pure? The rhythm of the land slowly steadied his spirit, though the image of Kitty still lingered in his thoughts, like a distant light he could not reach. In St. Petersburg, another drama unfolded quietly. Anna returned home to her husband, Alexei Alexandrovich Karenin, and their young son, Seryozha. Karenin was a man of logic and control, respectable, cold, and deeply concerned with appearances. He was not cruel, but he lacked warmth. His love for Anna was more a sense of possession and order than passion. Anna tried to immerse herself in her familiar life, but something within her had changed. Vronsky's presence at the ball had awakened feelings she could not easily silence. Her mind told her to forget, to return fully to her role as a dutiful wife and mother, but her heart stirred restlessly. She began noticing small things she had once ignored. Karenin's measured speech, his mechanical habits, the absence of tenderness in his touch. Vronsky, however, was not a man to be ignored. Fascinated by Anna, he followed her to St. Petersburg under the guise of continuing his duties as an officer. His charm, his daring, and his relentless pursuit unsettled Anna. At first she resisted, clinging to the life she knew, but the pull between them was undeniable, like two magnets drawing closer, despite every rational attempt to separate them. They met at gatherings, exchanged brief but charged glances, spoke with a politeness that barely concealed the storm beneath. Society began to whisper. Everyone could see the subtle dance between the two, even if no words had yet confirmed it. Back in Germany, Kitty's healing began not through the mineral waters, but through unexpected friendships. At the spa she met two women, one a devout, kind-hearted Russian woman whose quiet faith moved Kitty deeply. The other, a young, consumptive girl whose fragility and courage in the face of death awakened Kitty's compassion. Away from the glittering illusions of Moscow society, Kitty began to reflect. She saw that the love she had imagined with Vronsky had been shallow, built on dreams rather than truth. Her heart slowly softened, not toward him, but toward a deeper understanding of herself and of life. As winter turned to spring, three lives, Anna's, Kitty's, and Levin's, moved along separate but fateful paths. Kitty's soul slowly healed. Levin buried his pain in the honest soil, and Anna stood at the edge of a choice that would change everything. What began as heartbreak was slowly transforming into something else. For Kitty, growth. For Levin, reflection. And for Anna, a dangerous awakening. Spring spread its soft light across the Russian countryside, and on Levin's estate, life followed the rhythm of the earth. The thawing fields, the smell of damp soil, and the return of birds brought new energy to the peasants and to Levin himself. Each morning he walked through the fields with purposeful steps, speaking with his workers, studying their methods, and thinking constantly about how to improve the land. The world of the countryside was simple, but profound to him. Here among men who tilled the soil with their own hands, he felt closer to truth than in any glittering salon of Moscow. Yet his heart was divided. The quiet work of the land brought him peace, but in the evenings when the sun dipped below the horizon, thoughts of Kitty returned unbidden. He would imagine her walking beside him through the fields, her laughter mingling with the wind. He tried to tell himself that her rejection was final, but love is not easily dismissed by reason. While Levin found solace in the open fields, Anna lived in the carefully ordered world of St. Petersburg society. Her husband, Alexei Alexandrovich Karenin, moved through life with the precision of a clock. He occupied a high position in government, attended committees and receptions, and maintained his reputation with meticulous care. To him, emotions were inconveniences, untidy elements that needed to be controlled. But beneath the polished surface of their home, cracks began to widen. Karenin noticed changes in Anna, moments of distraction, a light in her eyes when certain names were mentioned, sudden blushes at unexpected times. Though his feelings for her were not passionate, his sense of pride and order was threatened. The whispers of society, subtle at first, reached his ears. The name Vronsky was always near hers. Anna struggled to quiet the turmoil within. She loved her son, Seryozha, with a fierce, tender devotion. Her days were spent with him, reading, walking, teaching. Yet whenever she found herself alone, her thoughts turned to Vronsky. She remembered his gaze, his voice, his unwavering attention. In her heart, she knew she stood at the edge of something dangerous, something that could not be undone once embraced. Meanwhile, Kitty's time abroad was changing her in ways neither she nor her family could have foreseen. In the calm, disciplined environment of the German spa, she learned to look beyond her wounded pride. The devout Russian woman she befriended showed her a kind of inner strength Kitty had never known. The dying girl, pale yet serene, taught her the value of quiet courage. Kitty began to understand that love was not about dazzling dances or charming smiles. It was about compassion, sincerity, and the kind of bond that could endure hardship. Her heart slowly mended, not because she forgot Vronsky, but because she began to see him for what he truly was. A brilliant but restless soul, not the foundation of a lasting future. She grew calmer, more thoughtful, ready to return home not as the naive girl who left, but as a young woman who had faced her own fragility. Back in St. Petersburg, the dance between Anna and Vronsky grew more dangerous. Vronsky was relentless. His visits, his looks, his carefully chosen words all carried one message, that his love for her was absolute. Unlike the men of polite society who played at flirtation, Vronsky was utterly serious. He was willing to risk his reputation, his future, even his career. Anna's resistance weakened with each meeting. She felt alive in his presence in a way she had never experienced before. Karenina, guided more by his sense of propriety than his heart, began to watch his wife with cold precision. He questioned her subtly, observed her interactions, and tried to maintain control through polite conversation. But Anna's emotions were no longer something that could be contained by rules or appearances. Two worlds now stood in stark contrast: Levin's world of honest labor and quiet self-examination, and Anna's world of salons, whispers, and a love that defied convention. Kitty, somewhere between these worlds, was changing, preparing to return to Russia transformed. The lives of these three, Levin, Anna, and Kitty, were like three rivers flowing separately but inevitably toward the same vast sea, where their destinies would intertwine again. Summer arrived with its warm evenings and lively gatherings, and St. Petersburg society found its favorite stage at the racecourse. It was there, amid polished carriages, elegant dresses, and glittering officers' uniforms, that whispers turned into open gazes and veiled hints became undeniable truths. Anna sat in the grandstand beside her husband, dressed in a gown of refined simplicity that somehow made her shine even more brightly among the ladies. Her eyes, however, were fixed on the track, not on the horses but on one man, Alexei Vronsky. He was riding his magnificent stallion, Frou-Frou, in the officers' steeplechase, his uniform crisp, his confidence radiating like sunlight. Around them, the crowd hummed with excitement. Bets were placed, fans waved, and society chattered behind gloved hands. But for Anna, the world had narrowed to a single figure on horseback. Her face betrayed emotions she could no longer hide: anxiety, admiration, love. Her body leaned forward, every muscle taut, as if her own heart were racing alongside Vronsky's horse. Karenina noticed. Seated stiffly beside her, his eyes caught every flicker of emotion that crossed her face. When Vronsky took a dangerous jump and nearly fell, Anna let out an involuntary cry, her hand clutching the railing. The moment was brief but devastating. Dozens saw it. Her reaction was not that of a polite observer. It was the cry of a woman whose heart belonged to the man on the track. The race ended in disaster for Vronsky. His beloved Frou-Frou, pushed beyond her strength, stumbled and fell. The crowd gasped. The horse's leg was broken, and she had to be put down. Vronsky, though uninjured, was crushed. Anna's face mirrored his anguish so openly that Karenina's mask cracked. On the way home, he confronted her, not with rage but with cold, cutting precision. "I must ask," he said evenly, "that such displays do not occur again. It is unbecoming of a respectable woman." Anna turned to him, her eyes blazing. "You know what this is," she answered, her voice trembling with defiance and pain. Why pretend? For the first time, the pretense that had held their marriage together dissolved. Anna confessed her love for Vronsky, not in shame but with a kind of desperate honesty. Karenin listened in silence, his face pale but composed. He did not shout or weep. He responded with the cold logic of a man more concerned with order than with love. He told her plainly that he would not grant a divorce. Their marriage, in his view, was not about emotions but about public standing, stability, and appearances. He insisted that she maintain the facade of a dutiful wife for society's sake. Anna, now openly bound to Vronsky in her heart, found herself trapped between two worlds. Her love for Vronsky burned intensely, yet the walls of her marriage, her reputation, and her motherhood held her in place. She soon discovered she was pregnant, with Vronsky's child. This fact deepened the rift. Karenina, more humiliated than heartbroken, informed her that he would claim the child as his own if needed, and that their son, Seryozha, would remain with him no matter what happened. The affair, no longer whispered about, became the subject of every drawing room conversation. Invitations that once flowed freely began to dry up. Anna was still received in society, but with careful politeness, like one handling a beautiful yet dangerous object. As her pregnancy advanced, Anna grew weaker. Vronsky, deeply in love yet caught in a web of guilt, watched helplessly as she drifted between passion and despair. The birth was difficult. Anna hovered between life and death. In the haze of fever and exhaustion, she spoke with a clarity that shook those around her. She forgave Karenina. She begged for his forgiveness too, overwhelmed by a wave of spiritual sincerity that came at the edge of mortality. Karenina, seeing his wife pale and near death, experienced something he had never felt before: true compassion. His pride melted in that moment. Standing beside Vronsky, his rival, he forgave them both. He declared he bore no hatred and would accept the child as his own. His coldness gave way to something almost saintly, surprising even himself. Vronsky, crushed by the weight of his actions and Karenina's unexpected generosity, was driven to despair. Believing Anna might die and overwhelmed by guilt, he attempted to take his own life with a revolver. The shot did not kill him, but it left a scar on his soul. When Anna slowly recovered, the world she returned to was no longer the same. Her marriage had shattered beyond repair. Society's eyes were fixed upon her, and Vronsky's love, once intoxicating, was now shadowed by tragedy and sacrifice. The stage had shifted. The masks had fallen. What began as hidden glances had erupted into open confrontation, and no one would emerge unchanged. The summer sun faded into the soft light of autumn, and with it came the quiet aftermath of confrontation. Anna's recovery brought her back from the threshold of death, but the world she returned to no longer fit her. Her marriage to Karenina was a hollow structure, held together by legalities and appearances. Her bond with Vronsky, once intoxicating and forbidden, now stood in the harsh daylight of reality. The scandal had reached every corner of society. There was no more hiding, no more pretending. Vronsky, tormented by guilt and Karenina's unexpected act of forgiveness, sought escape in the only way he could imagine: through Anna. He abandoned his career prospects in St. Petersburg and prepared to leave Russia with her. His near-fatal gunshot had not only wounded his body, it had stripped away the lightness that once defined him. He no longer rode through society as the confident officer admired by all. He was now a man bound to a love that demanded everything. They left quietly, traveling to Italy. The journey was long, crossing landscapes that seemed to mirror their inner worlds, rivers winding through silent valleys, mountains towering in solemn majesty, and towns where no one knew their names. For Anna, these unfamiliar places offered a fleeting sense of freedom. In Italy, they rented a villa surrounded by cypress trees and golden hills. There, away from the watchful eyes of Petersburg society, they tried to build a new life together. At first, their days were filled with the beauty of their surroundings. They visited galleries, strolled through gardens, and shared moments of laughter and intimacy. Without the weight of gossip, their love felt pure again, as if the world had been stripped back to just the two of them. Anna devoted herself entirely to Vronsky, finding joy in his presence, his voice, his touch. She believed that at last they could live without fear or judgment. But as the weeks turned into months, a subtle change crept into their lives. For Vronsky, Italy was beautiful but empty. His career, his regiment, the competitive social world that had once given him purpose, all had been left behind. His love for Anna was deep, but it was no longer enough to fill the space where ambition once lived. He began to feel restless. The villa that had felt like paradise began to feel like a cage. Anna sensed the shift with painful clarity. She watched him grow thoughtful, distracted, his eyes lingering on the future beyond their secluded retreat. Though he never said it aloud, she felt his longing for the life he had abandoned. Her love, once a source of power, now became a source of fear. She clung to him more fiercely, trying to hold on to the happiness that was slowly slipping through her fingers. Meanwhile, far away in Russia, life moved forward in quieter, steadier rhythms. Levin, after the bitterness of rejection, had returned to his land. His days were filled with honest work and philosophical reflection. Kitty, having returned from Germany with a calmer heart, found herself changed. The naive girl who had once believed in romantic fantasies was gone. In her place stood a young woman with a deeper understanding of herself and others. Fate brought Levin and Kitty together once more in Moscow. When Levin saw her again, his heart stirred with a mixture of joy and apprehension. She greeted him not with the coquettish charm of their earlier encounters, but with sincerity and gentleness. In that moment he realized he still loved her, not as an ideal, but as the woman she had become. Their conversations were hesitant at first, filled with unspoken memories, but slowly they grew warmer, more honest. Levin proposed again, this time not with the fervor of a dreamer, but with the steadiness of a man who truly understood what he wanted. Kitty accepted, her eyes shining with quiet happiness. Their engagement brought joy not just to their families, but to themselves. As if two paths that had diverged painfully had found their way back together. Their wedding was simple yet beautiful, filled with genuine warmth. Unlike the grand society balls and staged appearances of the city, their union was rooted in sincerity. Kitty entered her new life with an open heart, ready to face the challenges of marriage with love and patience. Levin, often awkward in society, found in her a partner who could soften his rough edges without changing his essence. Back in Italy, Anna and Vronsky's relationship continued to shift. Though their love was real, the world they had created existed outside of everything familiar. There were no friends, no duties, no anchors, only each other. For Anna, this isolation was bearable, even welcome. For Vronsky, it became stifling. He began to involve himself in art circles, meeting new acquaintances, while Anna remained at home, increasingly anxious whenever he was away. The lovers had traded the judgment of society for the solitude of exile. In that quiet space, their passion glowed brightly but also cast long shadows. What once felt liberating began to reveal its cost: the loss of identity, of community, and of the quiet, stabilizing rhythms of ordinary life. They had won their love through defiance, but now they faced the question neither had truly asked before. How does love endure when stripped of everything else? Winter returned to Russia, and with it came the quiet, steady rhythm of married life for Levin and Kitty. Their union, unlike the passionate storm of Anna and Vronsky's love, began with gentleness and sincerity. After their wedding, they settled on Levin's country estate, far from the intrigues of Moscow's drawing rooms. For Levin, this new chapter was both joyful and bewildering. He had long imagined marriage as a harmonious blending of souls, an unbroken stream of mutual understanding. The reality was more complex. Kitty brought light and warmth into his home, but she was also a young woman entering a world she had never known, the demanding, often harsh life of a landowner's wife. Levin, accustomed to solitude and a particular way of doing things, often found himself puzzled by her expectations, her tears over small misunderstandings, and her longing for companionship, during moments when he retreated into his thoughts. Yet beneath these early misunderstandings lay a strong foundation. Kitty's love for Levin was unwavering. She admired his honesty, even when it came in blunt, awkward bursts. She saw the depth of his soul, even when he struggled to express it. Slowly, she learned the rhythms of rural life, managing the household, understanding the peasants' ways, and adapting her delicate upbringing to the robust, practical demands of the countryside. Levin, in turn, began to soften. Her presence filled the house with warmth he had not known before. When she laughed, even his most serious thoughts seemed to lighten. Her gentle touch reminded him that love was not a philosophical concept, but a living, breathing bond that required patience, humility, and care. Their disagreements were real, but so were their reconciliations. In the quiet of the countryside, amid fields and snowy forests, their marriage grew like a young tree, still tender, but deeply rooted. Far away from this peaceful rhythm, Anna and Vronsky returned to St. Petersburg. Their time in Italy had run its course. Vronsky, yearning for his old world, persuaded Anna to come back with him, believing they could find a place for themselves despite the scandal. But St. Petersburg society had not forgotten. Invitations that once poured in now arrived hesitantly, if at all. Ladies received Anna with forced politeness. Men admired her beauty but kept their distance. Behind fans and over teacups, her name was whispered with pity and judgment. Anna's situation was delicate. She had left her husband without a formal divorce, and though she lived openly with Vronsky, She occupied a space neither respectable nor entirely rejected. She was no longer a wife, but society refused to fully acknowledge her as Vronsky's partner. Every public appearance reminded her of the invisible wall that surrounded her, a wall built by the same society that once adored her. This isolation began to press heavily upon her spirit. She spent her days at home, often alone, while Vronsky re-entered his social and professional circles. He was admired still, his charm and rank opening doors that were now closed to her. Though his love for Anna was sincere, he could not share her exile completely. He attended gatherings, served in military affairs, and enjoyed a kind of freedom that Anna no longer possessed. Jealousy, once a fleeting emotion, began to grow within her like a slow, consuming fire. She feared losing Vronsky, the one thing she had chosen above all else. Every time he left, she imagined other women, other lives he might lead without her. Her love, once a radiant force that defied convention, became tinged with anxiety and desperation. Vronsky, in turn, began to feel the weight of her dependence. He loved her deeply, but he was a man accustomed to movement, to honor, to public life. The intensity of her jealousy and the constant need for reassurance began to weary him, though he rarely admitted it aloud. Their once equal bond shifted subtly. She clung while he, without intending cruelty, drifted toward the world that still accepted him. Meanwhile, Levin and Kitty faced their own trials, not of scandal or jealousy, but of ordinary life. Levin's brother Nikolai, gravely ill, came to stay with them. His decline brought sorrow to the household, confronting them both with the realities of suffering and mortality. Kitty, showing a strength Levin had not fully recognized, cared for Nikolai with quiet devotion. She did not flinch from his suffering. She tended to him with a gentle courage that moved Levin deeply. In those days, he saw in her not just a beloved wife, but a soul of quiet greatness. Their marriage deepened through shared experience, through work, illness, laughter, and the changing seasons. They built a life not out of defiance of the world, but within it, accepting both its burdens and its blessings. In contrast, Anna and Vronsky's world grew narrower. Their love, once boundless, began to turn inward, feeding on itself. Society's doors remained half-closed. Anna's legal situation with Karenin remained unresolved, and her emotional world revolved entirely around Vronsky. The two marriages stood like two paths diverging in the same vast forest, one shaded by the quiet growth of mutual respect and shared burdens, the other lit brightly by passion, but surrounded by encroaching shadows. The contrast was becoming sharper with each passing season, one path leading toward stability and spiritual growth, the other toward a precipice neither lover yet dared to name. The snow of another winter blanketed St. Petersburg in pale silence. But within Anna's heart there was no calm, only a restless gathering storm. Her love for Vronsky, once luminous and intoxicating, had begun to transform into something darker, a fragile, desperate dependence. She had staked everything, reputation, marriage, family, on this single bond, and now she feared losing it more than anything in the world. Vronsky's days were filled with military obligations, social duties, and political ambitions. He attended gatherings where Anna could no longer follow. Though he adored her, he was still a man of his rank, expected to appear in salons, clubs, and official circles. Anna, however, had become unwelcome in most drawing rooms. She was spoken of with lowered voices, half pitying, half scornful. Invitations were rare, and when they came, they were extended more out of obligation than desire. Left alone for long stretches, Anna's imagination became her enemy. Every time Vronsky left, she pictured other women, imagined whispered conversations, envisioned betrayals that did not exist. Her jealousy grew feverish, turning every delay, every faint coolness in his manner into proof of his fading love. She began to question him endlessly, her voice trembling between tenderness and accusation. Vronsky, though patient at first, found himself caught in an invisible net. He loved Anna, but her relentless suspicions wearied him. He longed for her trust, yet she could not give it. Their quarrels grew more frequent, intense, and exhausting. After each storm of emotion, there would come a desperate reconciliation, filled with tears and passionate embraces. But beneath it all, cracks widened silently. Anna's relationship with her son, Seryozha, tormented her deeply. After leaving Karenin's house, she was denied access to the boy except for rare, controlled visits. Her longing for him grew unbearable. On his birthday, unable to resist, she defied Karenin's order, and went secretly to see him. The moment she entered his room, her heart broke at the sight of his innocent joy. He rushed to her, throwing his arms around her neck, showering her with kisses as if no time had passed. But the reunion was fleeting. A servant discovered her, and the spell was broken. The house once hers now felt foreign. Karenin's distant, polite presence crushed her hope of reconciliation. She left in tears, haunted by the look of confusion on her son's face as she was led away. Levin and Kitty, far from the turbulence of Petersburg, experienced their own turning points. Kitty was expecting their first child, and their life on the estate took on a new, solemn joy. Levin found himself confronting deeper questions about existence, faith, and purpose. The impending birth stirred something profound in him, a sense of responsibility, not just to his family, but to the meaning of life itself. He wrestled with doubts, pacing his study late into the night, staring out into the snowy darkness, wondering about the nature of goodness, of God, of the soul. He sought answers in books, in conversations with intellectual friends, in the simple faith of peasants. Yet every answer led to more questions. Through it all, Kitty's quiet presence grounded him. Her calm faith, her gentle way of facing both joy and hardship, slowly guided him toward a quieter understanding. Back in Petersburg, Anna's isolation deepened. She wrote to Karenin, begging for a divorce that would legitimize her life with Vronsky, but he refused. Though he had forgiven her at her deathbed, he now retreated into religious fervor and rigid morality, unwilling to release her legally. Society's laws, just as much as its whispers, bound her in a cruel limbo, neither wife nor free woman. Her emotional world narrowed until only Vronsky remained. Every thought, every fear, every hope revolved around him. The more desperately she clung, the more strained their relationship became. Vronsky loved her, but her jealousy and insecurity weighed upon him like chains. He began to avoid confrontations, staying out later, seeking brief respites from the intensity that filled their home. One evening, after a bitter argument, Vronsky left for a social gathering, promising to return soon. Anna waited for him in their house, alone with her thoughts. The city outside was quiet, the streets covered in a thin layer of melting snow. Her mind raced between memories, suspicions, and unbearable longing. She read and reread his note, paced the rooms, imagined conversations that had never taken place. Her heart, worn thin by months of turmoil, broke under the weight of her fears. Driven by a desperate need to end the torment, she called for her carriage and went out into the cold night. The city blurred past as she was carried toward the train station, the same place where she had first met Vronsky, the same place that had marked the beginning of her fateful journey. The sound of the train approaching grew louder, filling her mind like an inescapable truth. In that moment, her thoughts were not orderly or calm. They rushed through her like a flood. Love, betrayal, regret, memories of her son's arms around her, Karenin's cold eyes, Vronsky's smile, the whispers of society, the walls closing in. She stepped down from the carriage, walked deliberately onto the platform, her heart beating with terrible clarity. As the train thundered forward, Anna stepped toward it, and in that instant everything ended. The crowd gasped. The great iron wheels crushed the life that had once been so radiant, so full of possibility. The same railway that had carried her into a passionate love became the stage of her tragic end. News of her death spread quickly. Vronsky, devastated and hollow, found no solace in the world he had returned to. Overcome with grief and unable to bear the emptiness, he joined a military campaign in Serbia, seeking death on the battlefield as a form of escape. Anna's story, once whispered behind fans, now echoed through society as both scandal and tragedy. A cautionary tale and a wound on the hearts of those who had loved her. Spring returned to the Russian countryside, washing the land in soft green after a long, hard winter. On Levin's estate, the fields were alive again with the sound of plows and the singing of peasants. The snow had melted, and with it some of the heaviness in Levin's heart seemed to lift. Yet within him, questions still stirred, questions of existence, faith, and meaning that no season could quiet. Kitty had given birth to a son, a tiny, fragile life that filled their home with a new kind of light. The night of the birth had tested Levin in ways he had never known before. He had paced the floor like a man awaiting judgment, tormented by the thought that she might die, that happiness might be taken from him just as he had grasped it. When he finally heard the baby's cry and saw Kitty's exhausted but radiant face, a deep wave of humility swept through him. Fatherhood brought both joy and fear. As he looked upon his newborn son, he was struck by how little control humans truly held over life. All his calculations, his efforts, his intellect, none of it could have commanded the child's first breath. It was a mystery that both frightened and awed him. He felt, more keenly than ever, the presence of something vast and unknowable. The news of Anna's death reached Levin and Kitty like a distant echo, tragic, but belonging to another world. In St. Petersburg and Moscow, society absorbed the scandal with its usual mixture of fascination and moralizing. Some pitied her. Others shook their heads and spoke of divine punishment. Vronsky, broken and aimless, left for Serbia to join a volunteer regiment. Those who saw him off said he looked like a man walking toward death, not glory. Karenina remained in his quiet, rigid world, raising Seryozha and the child Anna had borne with Vronsky. His forgiveness at her bedside had been genuine, but after her death, he retreated further into religious austerity, as if seeking refuge from the pain of his public humiliation and private loss. Levin's own life moved forward in a different way. The countryside gave him solace, but his mind remained restless. He found himself asking again and again why people lived, why they struggled, why they loved and suffered. He tried to find answers in books, in conversations with intellectual friends, in philosophical debates, but everything dissolved into uncertainty. Then, one simple moment changed everything.